So it's week 45, it's the 16th of October, and it's also in retrospect because I didn't have my camera and I was currently in Australia. But from my diary, these were the lessons that I learned. Well, the first one is we traveled around Sydney. We went and looked at the Australian market, and I'll be honest with you, every time I go to Australia, I'm fascinated by the fundamentals. I believe if you took a 30-year view on all the countries around the world, Australia would have to be in the top 3 within the next 30 years. They've got solid infrastructure in terms of what they're building. They've got great population growth. But the only way that population is growing is through immigration and through natural population growth. But that immigration, there's only 2 ways that people are coming into the country, whether they've got money or they've got skills. And so that population is just getting stronger and stronger. It's currently about 22 million. By 2050, they expect it to be around 36 million. In terms of properties, they're 240,000 homes short as we speak at the moment. They've got to increase their current supply by 36% a year just to keep up with demand. And I think we've learned with regards to the fundamentals in America, in Ireland, in Dubai, in Spain, you know, those markets that were decimated, the reason being is that they had an oversupply. The market plunged by 50% and it hasn't recovered, and that's because they had an oversupply of the product in terms of where they are and what they were doing. Whereas in places like Australia or London even more so, you know, what happened is the market dropped by 15%, but because the fundamentals are right of supply and demand, basically the market recovered by 17% in less than 12 months. And I think Australia is the same. You know, the market, the fundamentals are right. They've had 8 interest rate rises. It is tough at the moment, but that's just a short-term problem which always takes place when you've got an interest rate rising cycle. The thing that I think is very interesting is this demand and supply kilter. And we spent a lot of time, did a lot of research, spoke to a lot of experts in terms of what's happening. We also spent a lot of time looking at shopping centers. Very interesting at the moment, you can buy shopping centers on a 9.5% yield. Your cost of capital is 7.5%. So you're buying cash flow positive, and we've got a team of people on the ground, South Africans, ex-South Africans with a lot of experience to manage it and to make sure they're squeezing that lemon and getting the most out of that asset. We also, one of the gems that we found was a student housing opportunity, a $42 million student housing opportunity. The landowner or the owner of the building has got himself into an overgeared situation. He's currently at a loan to value of 83%. That would have been fine 3 or 4 years ago. He's coming to his 5-year financing limit. The bank's saying, look, refinance or sell. So we have the opportunity to come in with a $10 million equity investment. We'll pay down the loan. We'll bring the loan to value to around 50%. And on that 10 million, we're looking at a net return of an 8% yield. And we get to own 50% of the building. There's tremendous upside. There's a lease in place with the University of New South Wales till 2020 with 3 5-year options to continue from that. And also, if we took the 242 units and started them, or what we call sectional title, and sold them off, the value today is 42 million. But if we sold them off today as residential property, it would be 52 million. So there's actually 10 million net asset value. We're going to be coming back to market. We're currently doing a thorough due diligence on it. But to be honest, that's going to be by private invite. You know, it's only for really top net worth, high net worth individuals. We only want a couple of people, but certainly my top investors are very keen, and we're looking at it very, very aggressively at the moment because it's a fantastic opportunity. The second thing for me, the second lesson was that, you know, they say that in life you're only as good as your peer group. And if your peer group is below you, then they'll be pulling you down. Well, one of the best parts about my Australian trip was I got to spend a whole week with Hennie. Hennie is a high net worth individual. He's worth hundreds of millions of rand, but most importantly, he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met, one of the nicest businessmen I've ever dealt with. And I got just to spend a lot of time with him to ask him about his experience, how he got it, where he got to. The fact that he actually only started his first business when he was 34. That gave me a lot of hope. You know, you always see these people when they're in their 50s and they're worth hundreds of millions of rand, and you think to yourself, crisis, you know, and you get really down on yourself. But to hear he only started 34 was quite encouraging, and I chatted about him and what he did and what his breakthroughs were. Absolutely fascinating to be around people like that, learning from absolute legends. And for me, not just about money. You know, they've got a real balance. They're out there watching the Rugby World Cup. They've got a happy family. His daughter's head of the Pretoria Girls or Waterkloof or whatever it is. Very happy family, well-grounded children, everything that we're looking for in life. Not just about the money and the success, but also in other areas of their life. And I just think it's such an asset to be able to spend time with people like that, to learn from them, to ask them questions, so that I too can have that in my life. The third thing was we went up to Brisbane. We looked at a number of different developments, actually 10 different developments all over Brisbane. There's a massive trend happening in Australia. People have always wanted to buy homes 4-bedroom homes on a piece of land, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes on a piece of land. But transport's difficult. The roads are congested, and really it's expensive as well. People don't want to drink and drive. They don't want to get stuck in traffic on the way to work. So we're finding that there's a lot more densification and people starting to live closer to the transport nodes. And as a foreigner, it's easy to see this from a distance, and it's providing us with great opportunities to be able to help our South African investors get involved in terms of the developments. And actually, we found some great stuff in Brisbane in terms of where we are. I then did my first webinar for W Sales Mastery. I'm not going to lie to you, it was a bit tough. 3 a.m. in the morning, Brisbane time. I had to get up about 2 a.m. just to wake up and be psyched up. You get so pumped when you do those webinars. I couldn't sleep again till 5 o'clock. So along with the jet lag, I literally slept for about 4 hours that night. But that was the first one. The first one at W Sales Mastery. We had a lot of people online, great energy, and it was awesome to kick it off. And I'm really excited by this venture and the way that I basically positioned it, because we're getting huge feedback and positive feedback from people in terms of what is the opportunity. The fifth lesson for me is having fun. You know, I always travel, but when I travel, I always tend to see people. I saw my uncle, my aunt, and my little cousin. We went out for dinner. We had lots of fun. Hennie and I went for drinks, had a fantastic sundowner in Sydney, literally looking out over the bay, got some amazing pictures. We went out with some of our partners in Brisbane. But the ultimate for me was that I spent the whole weekend, the whole semi-final weekend, with one of my best friends from UCT. We flew over on Friday morning. We had a complete boys tour. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, watched both the semi-finals, had a huge party in Auckland. And really for me, that's the essence. It's about living life to the full, watching the rugby. The rugby, certainly the Wales-France game was a load of crap, but the Aussie All Black game was great. Had a fantastic party, but got to spend real quality time with my mate. And that for me is the essence of life. You know, yes, I want to be successful. Yes, I want to drive and build big businesses. Yes, I want to make a fortune of money. But relationships, my family, my friends are so important to me, and it was so fantastic to be able to spend great quality time with my mate, have lots of fun, sing lots of songs, completely lost my voice singing all the different songs and doing all the war cries. And to be honest, the highlight for me was actually walking around New Zealand with a New Zealand flag, a New Zealand scarf, and with a wallaby tied around its neck. Got huge amount of support from everyone until at the stadium they told me to take it down because it's deflammatory. I have to say, I'm a big believer in investing in Australia because of the investment returns and how my investment's protected, but I think I would struggle with all the rules. You know, I literally got to take it down because it's inflammatory, which is just ridiculous. But ladies and gentlemen, that's us. That's what we did this week. And really, with regards to the fun that we had in Auckland, I have to say, after all the hours of traveling and everything, it was well worth it. We really had a party. And I tell you, the thing I'd like to leave you, so many South Africans were there, and hats off to them. There was so much support. And if South Africa, if you got points for the number of supporters you got, we would have guaranteed to have been in that semi, even in the final, and possibly won it, because there were so many South Africans proud to be wearing their jerseys, and it just made me so proud. And I'll be honest with you, I literally wore my Springbok jersey and my Springbok jacket 24/7 for nearly 2 weeks, because at the end of the day, I'm incredibly proud to be South African. Cheers.